The humid late afternoon pressed in as the city bus lumbered along Canal Street, weaving through the tangle of cars and horse-drawn carriages. The heavy scent of magnolias mingled with the oil and smoke of 1,000 street vendors. Inside, the bus was packed, its worn seats sagging beneath commuters, drifters, and the desperate. Near the back, a group of young thugs, tattooed arms, sharp eyes, circled a timid girl. She clutched her backpack tightly to her chest, shrinking into the window as their laughter grew louder. At the next stop, the doors hissed open. A man in dark sunglasses stepped onto the bus. Gabe Maddox, broad shoulders beneath a faded black jacket. Calm gait that made space before him. A heavily pregnant woman, weary and flushed, struggled to find her balance. Gabe took in the scene in one glance. Without a word, he rose and gestured to her with an open hand, but before she could sit, one of the thugs shoved past, slamming himself into the seat with a smirk. The pregnant woman looked down, uncertain. The girl beside her flinched. Gabe's jaw tightened, but his voice remained steady. "You think it's funny," he said softly, "to bully someone weaker than you?" The thugs laughed. One cracked his knuckles. Gabe handed his sunglasses to the woman beside him, as if passing off something delicate, and then he moved. A sharp punch shattered the first thug's nose. In a fluid spin, Gabe seized another by the wrist, disarming him of a switchblade and sending it skittering down the aisle. A knee drove into the third's gut, folding him in two. Moments later, 3 knives flew out the bus window into the street below. Breathless, the passengers watched in stunned silence. Gabe exhaled, voice even. "I despise weapons like these." Then he turned to the pregnant woman, his expression softening. "Are you all right?" 1984, northern jungles of Colombia. The air buzzed with insects as dense green canopies swallowed the horizon. Deep beneath the overgrowth, 2 figures crouched beneath the rusted steel of an aging bridge. Captain Gabe Maddox and Lieutenant Victor Drake, both elite CIA explosive operatives. Beads of sweat traced lines down Gabe's temple as he carefully affixed charges beneath the structure. His hands moved with precision born of long, hard training. Nearby, Drake checked his watch, impatience flickering in his pale eyes. Without waiting for Gabe's signal, he twisted the timer into place. 60 seconds. We're on schedule. Gabe's head snapped around. Wait, the intel's wrong. There's a family in that car. Through the scope of his binoculars, Gabe could see the target approaching. A sleek Mercedes with blacked-out windows, and in the back seat, a young girl, no more than 7, clutching a doll. "Pull the plug, Victor," Gabe shouted, heart hammering. "There's a kid in there." Drake's voice was ice. "You're the rigger. I'm the trigger. Sit back and watch the show." There was no failsafe, no override. Without another word, Gabe sprinted toward the final charge, fingers trembling as the seconds bled away. 00:04, 00:03. The Mercedes crept closer. 00:02. The girl's wide eyes locked with Gabe's through the windshield. 00:01. The world erupted in flame. Idle wave of heat and steel consumed the bridge. Gabe was thrown into the river below, lungs burning as the wreckage collapsed into the water above him. Later, jungle clearing. Soaked and shaking, Gabe confronted Drake beneath the dripping canopy. "You killed them," Gabe roared. "You didn't care about the innocent." Drake sneered, drawing a pistol. "I taught you everything you know, and you dare question me?" Their fists collided beneath the canopy's dim light. A brutal, desperate struggle. Bloodied and gasping, Gabe forced Drake down, fists slamming against his former mentor's face. "You like watching them die?" Gabe hissed. "No, not anymore." The fallout was swift. Gabe reported Drake's actions to CIA superiors. Drake was quietly dismissed, his career in ruins. But justice proved hollow, racked with guilt, disillusioned by the agency's indifference. Gabe resigned, his trust shattered, his faith in the system gone, and so he vanished. 10 years later, New Orleans, 1994. A battered door creaked open beneath an abandoned waterfront warehouse. Inside, amidst coils of wire and dusty schematics, Gabe Maddox lived off the grid, a ghost, a shadow, a man haunted by one face. The girl in the car, no clients, no partners, no questions, until the phone rang, a woman's voice, trembling yet resolute. "Elena Ward, I need your help," she said. "I want 3 men dead. You're my only hope." Gabe's hand hovered over the receiver, his voice low. "You want justice, go to court. Use the law. The law's been bought." The words struck like a knife. "Every judge is on their payroll." A long pause. "I know you understand controlled charges," Elena whispered. "Word is you were the best." But Gabe's gaze drifted toward the darkened river beyond his window. "I don't meet clients," he said flatly. "I don't take jobs anymore." He hung up, but something lingered in her voice. Grief, and something deeper, a hunger, one he recognized all too well. That night, a stray cat followed Gabe along the moonlit docks. Against his better judgment, he scooped it up. "Damn it, not you too," he murmured, as the empty bus rumbled toward the quarter. Gabe boarded. The cat tucked beneath his jacket and disappeared into the shadows. By dawn, Gabe Maddox was already moving. The woman's voice haunted him. Elena Ward. There had been no tremor of fear in her words, only a raw, unwavering need for vengeance. It stirred something in him, something long buried, curiosity, or maybe guilt. Either way, he couldn't ignore it. By noon, Gabe had traced her number to a small apartment above a worn florist shop in the Lower Garden District. From the shadows across the street, he watched. Then he saw her. Elena stepped out, a slender figure wrapped in a dark coat, despite the Louisiana heat. Auburn hair swept into a loose knot. A face too young for the grief it carried. Eyes that had seen too much. She moved with quiet purpose. Gabe followed her, a ghost among the midday crowds. The cemetery gates groaned as Elena entered. Spanish moss hung low from twisted oaks, swaying over cracked marble tombs. The dead watched in silence. She stopped before a small family plot, her hand trembling as it traced a name on the stone. "Mama, Papa," she whispered. Gabe lingered at a respectful distance. Through the ironwork shadows, he heard her voice. Soft, confessional. "They killed you. You saw them. I see them every night." Her breath caught. "I'll finish it. I'll end this. For you." Gabe exhaled slowly. He had heard those words before, from men and women who had lost everything. Vengeance was a flame that consumed all it touched. And yet, he understood. Later that night, in the gloom of his warehouse loft, Gabe fed the stray cat scraps of smoked fish. His fingers lingered at the phone. Finally, he dialed. The line clicked. "It's Maddox." A breathless pause. Then Elena's voice, tired, wary. "I didn't think you'd call. Who are they?" "Frank Romano's men." A bitter edge crept into her tone. "3 of them. They murdered my parents in cold blood." Gabe leaned back, eyes narrowing. "The Romano Crime Syndicate. Old blood in New Orleans. Corrupt, brutal, untouchable." "You sure about this?" "I was a child," she said quietly. "I saw it all. My father tried to hide me. But I saw everything. The way they laughed. The way they made him beg." Silence thickened between them. "I know what I'm asking," Elena added. "I've lived with this too long. I'm going in, with or without you." Gabe closed his eyes, his conscience twisted. He had vowed never again to take lives, not after Columbia. And yet, leaving her to face them alone felt like its own kind of betrayal. "You'll need a new identity," he said at last. "No one in that world can know who you are." A small gasp. "You'll help. I'll prepare the field. But you stay out of their reach until I say otherwise." "Understood." She hung up. Gabe stared at the receiver, exhaling hard. Victor Drake would not sit idle. The man had waited years to hunt him down. If Gabe moved against Romano's inner circle, Drake would come for him. A reckoning was inevitable. "So be it," Gabe muttered. Elsewhere in the French Quarter, beneath crystal chandeliers and velvet drapes. The Romano family celebrated. Frank Romano, broad and barrel-chested, presided at the head of the table. His son, Dominic, laughed beside him. Arrogant, volatile, wine flowed, cigars burned low. In a quiet corner stood Victor Drake, watching it all through calculating eyes. He was no longer the brash Lieutenant Gabe had known. Now he was the syndicate's head of security, ruthless, feared, methodical. Yet one obsession still burned in him. Finding Gabe Maddox. You think he's still alive? Dominic sneered. That ghost. Drake's lips curled faintly. He's alive. And when he comes, I'll be ready. Days later, Elena Ward emerged transformed. Under Gabe's guidance, she had taken a new identity. Adrian Ward. Her wardrobe sharpened. Her demeanor cold, elegant. A woman who belonged in Romano's glittering world. At a lavish syndicate gala in a riverfront casino. She made her entrance. Eyes turned. Whispers followed. Dominic Romano noticed first. Who's the new Rose? He asked, circling. Elena met his gaze without flinching. Adrian. I go where I please. Dominic grinned, drawn to her poise. Victor Drake, nearby, watched her keenly. Something about her unsettled him. Welcome to our city. Dominic purred. Stick close. I can show you things you'll never forget. Elena forced a smile, her pulse steady. Inside, a single thought burned. I will bring them down one by one, across the bayou-slick streets. Gabe observed from afar, hidden beneath the shadowed eaves. Careful, Elena, he whispered. The hunt had begun. Monday morning, the streets of Tremay shimmered beneath the pale sun, the air heavy with humidity. Gabe Maddox moved through the back alleys, unseen, a solitary figure with a singular focus. For days he had tracked Charlie Russo, Romano's aging street boss, a man drunk on old power and routine. Every Monday, without fail, Charlie climbed the narrow stairs above a pawnshop to skim profits and feed his greed. Today would be different. Inside the building, Gabe crouched in a service corridor thick with dust. From his pack, he produced a shaped charge, compact and precise. His fingers worked swiftly, affixing it beneath the ornate brass door handle of Charlie's office, wiring it to a pressure trigger. Then he waited. Footsteps echoed, a rasping cough. Keys jingled against worn brass. Come on, Gabe whispered. Charlie's bulk appeared, sweat-drenched, grumbling. He fumbled with the keys, breath heavy. The handle turned. Boom! The blast consumed the hallway in a flash of light and smoke. Charlie's body hit the floor before the sound of the explosion had faded. By the time sirens wailed, Gabe had already disappeared into the city. Later that morning, Romano Syndicate HQ. The mood inside the French Quarter stronghold was grim. Frank Romano paced behind the oak conference table, eyes blazing. Around him, his capos shifted uneasily. Victor Drake stood to one side, arms crossed, gaze steady. Someone sent us a message. Frank growled. I want his head. Dominic Romano leaned back, smirking. Could be a rival crew. Why panic? That wasn't random. Drake interrupted. I know that signature. Frank stopped pacing. You're sure? Positive. Maddox. A tense silence followed. Frank slammed his fist on the table. Bring me his head before Dominic's party. Understood. Drake replied. His mind raced. Maddox had returned, and this time Drake would not fail. That evening, Gabe's warehouse. Rain hammered the roof as Gabe cleaned his tools. The stray cat watching with unblinking eyes. The phone rang. You got him. Elena Ward's voice whispered, breathless. Thank you. Stay away from them now, Gabe said. Don't get close again. I can help. She pressed. I can get them in one place. No, you stay clear. The future's about to get very dark. He hung up, heart heavy with the weight of the path ahead. Romano Syndicate HQ. Days later, Frank summoned the police chief behind closed doors. An envelope of cash slid across the table. Bring Drake in as an advisor. Let him run this. By nightfall, Drake was embedded with the NOPD bomb squad. Their lieutenant eyed him warily. "We don't take orders from ex-CIA." Drake smiled thinly. "No? Then prove you can disarm this." From his duffel, he produced a live device, its timer blinking red. "Deactivate it, hero." Tension thickened. The room fell silent. At the last instant, Drake flipped a hidden switch, disarming the bomb. "Lesson 1, he said coldly. "Underestimate Maddox and you die." Meanwhile, French Quarter Bar. Elena moved with practiced grace, the smoky haze masking her loathing. Dominic Romano stayed close, intoxicated by her presence. "You enjoy my company?" he asked. "Of course," she replied, her smile hollow. Then Anthony Moretti entered. Recognition stabbed her heart. One of her parents' killers. Her pulse surged, hands trembling. She excused herself. Outside, rain pelted the pavement. Elena paced beneath flickering neon. Across the alley, Gabe watched silently. Moments later, Dominic stormed out, seizing her arm. "You don't walk away from me." "I needed air," Elena said evenly. Dominic softened, brushing her cheek. "Come back inside." Gabe's fists clenched, but he remained in the shadows. Patience, he reminded himself. Gabe's second hit. Tony Marino was consumed by fear. Paranoia dictated every move. Each morning he inspected his car beneath and within. But Gabe was patient. That day Tony's car checked out. Relieved, he entered his building. A pressure plate beneath the foyer rug awaited him. Boom! The blast shook the street. Tony's remains were beyond recognition. Romano HQ aftermath. Frank's fury boiled over. 2 men in 1 week. He shouted, "Where's Maddox?" "He's using remote traps," Drake replied. "Give me time. If my son dies next, you answer to me." Drake's eyes darkened. "It won't happen." Private room that night. Drake cornered Elena in a dim corridor. "You want your 3 corpses," he hissed. "I want Maddox. That was our deal." He gripped her arm tight. "Find him, now, or Dominic gets you." Elena's breath caught. "Understood." Gabe's warehouse, late night. The cat purred as Gabe cleaned his pistol. The phone rang. "Gabe, please." Elena's voice trembled. "Drake's pressing me. I can't stall them." "You were supposed to stay clear," Gabe said coldly. "I had no choice." "They'll kill me." A long pause. "Meet me one last time," she begged. "Please." Gabe's heart warred with reason. Finally, he exhaled. "All right, on my terms." Victor Drake. Listening in. Across the city, Drake replayed the call. "Got you," he whispered. Meticulously, he deployed a strike team. For him, this was no longer business. It was personal. And this time, he would win. Late evening, Gabe's workshop. The rain returned, thick and cold, hammering the tin roof. Inside the dim warehouse, Gabe Maddox worked with lethal focus. Before him lay a delicate trap, the most precise device he'd crafted yet. Dominic Romano was next. The youngest Romano son, arrogant and cruel, had inherited his father's ruthlessness without his discipline. He was also Elena's greatest danger. For days, Gabe had tracked Dominic's habits. A late-night tea ritual at his private suite in the Royal Crescent Hotel. Always the same porcelain cup, always prepared by a trusted aide. Now Gabe prepared a gift Dominic would never forget. Romano Syndicate HQ. Drake's private office. Victor Drake's patience thinned. Elena had failed to lure Gabe into the open. "I've delivered 2 bodies already," she argued. "You know he's watching. And the 3rd. Drake's eyes blazed. "Don't insult me. You'll get him here, or you'll wish Dominic were your only problem." He gripped her arm, fingers digging deep. "You want this to end? Then bait the trap. Now." Elena's voice barely held steady. "Understood." Royal Crescent Hotel 2 nights later. Dominic reclined in his suite, silk robe loose over his chest. The tea set gleamed under crystal lights. "Pour it carefully," he ordered his aide. The man obeyed. Outside, unseen, Gabe observed from a shadowed rooftop. He had infiltrated the suite earlier. replacing Dominic's cup with one rigged to trigger a shaped charge upon contact with hot liquid. Through binoculars, Gabe watched as the tea was poured. His finger hovered over the trigger. But then the suite door opened. Elena entered, her smile brittle, eyes flicking toward Dominic's untouched cup. "You're early," Dominic said, amused. "Good. Stay." Gabe's breath caught. His mind raced. "Not now," he hissed under his breath. He lowered the trigger, sweat beading at his temple. Across the suite, Elena caught the faintest flicker of movement beyond the window, Gabe's shadow. Relief and dread collided within her. Dominic rose, circling her. "You tense? Cool me. Sit. Outside." Gabe clenched his fists. He couldn't act, not without risking her life. Phone booth. Rain-drenched street. Minutes later, Gabe stood inside a battered phone booth. Rain slicking his hair. His hand trembled as he dialed. No answer. "Come on, Elena." His grip tightened around the receiver. Funeral, St. Louis Cathedral. Word spread swiftly. A funeral was to be held for Adrian Ward, one of Dominic's inner circle, killed in the chaos. Drake smiled coldly as the church filled. "He'll come," he told Frank Romano. "He always comes." "And if he doesn't?" Frank asked. "Then we tear the city apart." Inside the cathedral, mourners gathered around a closed casket, hidden in the rear pews. Gabe watched in silence. His eyes searched every face, heart pounding. Then the cathedral doors swung open. Elena entered, her presence defying death. Gabe's breath caught. She was alive. He rose, moving swiftly toward the exit. Drake's eyes widened, fury flashing. "He's here." Nearby hotel. Gabe and Elena reunite. In a narrow alley, Gabe caught Elena's wrist, spinning her into the shadows. "You're alive," he whispered hoarsely. "I had to make them think I was dead." She gasped. It was the only way to buy time. Gabe's gaze softened. Without another word, he pulled her into an embrace, their lips meeting in desperate relief. Later, inside a modest hotel room, they sat in silence, hands entwined. "We can disappear," Gabe said. "Now. Tonight." "Not yet," Elena replied, voice firm. "Frank is still alive. I need to finish this." Gabe's heart twisted. "Then we do it together." Romano HQ. Drake's rage. "She's alive," Drake spat. "And Maddox was here. Then why is he still breathing?" Frank snapped. "Because your idiot son insisted on parading her corpse. We'll get him." "You'd better," Frank growled. "Or you're next." Royal Crescent Hotel. Gabe's rooftop trap. Gabe knew they would hunt him now. He turned predator. On the hotel's rooftop, he prepared an elaborate series of traps, wire-triggered charges designed to collapse the floor beneath any strike team. Inside, Elena left a coded message on the syndicate bulletin board. "Meeting confirmed. Come alone." Drake intercepted the message, unaware of the trap awaiting. "Deploy the team," he ordered. "We end this tonight." That night, rooftop confrontation. The wind howled as Drake's strike team breached the hotel rooftop. Gabe watched from the shadows, trigger ready. As the first soldier crossed a pressure wire, boom, the rooftop shuddered. Cracks split the concrete. Men screamed as the floor gave way, hurling them into the darkness below. From across the rooftop, Drake emerged, pistol drawn. "Come out, Maddox." Gabe responded with a flurry of traps. Shattering lights, cascading debris. In the chaos, he grabbed Elena's hand. Now, they sprinted through the collapsing rooftop as explosions erupted behind them. Narrow escape, rain-slick streets. Breathless, Gabe and Elena ducked into a delivery truck, peeling away from the scene. "You all right?" Gabe asked. Elena nodded, tears streaking her face. "I thought I'd lost you." "Not tonight," Gabe whispered. Romano HQ final ultimatum. Drake returned bloodied, seething. "They escaped," he admitted. "But not for long. You failed me enough." Frank warned. "Fix it." Drake turned to Elena, now back in their grasp. "You will call him," he hissed. "One last time. Lure him, or Dominic will take you apart." Elena's gaze burned with quiet fury. "Then give me the phone," she said. Romano HQ, Drake's private office. Victor Drake loomed over Elena, his face twisted with fury. Across the room, Frank Romano watched in silence, eyes cold. "You failed," Drake spat. "Because of you, my men lie broken in that hotel. Now you will fix this." He thrust a phone into her trembling hands. "You will call him," he hissed. "Lure him in. This time you don't get a choice." Frank's voice rumbled low. "One slip, and you'll beg for death before I let my son have you." Elena swallowed hard. Her mind raced. One wrong word could doom them both. But if she played this right, there was still a chance. "Give me a moment," she whispered. Gabe's hideout, warehouse loft. Night cloaked the riverfront. Inside his workshop, Gabe moved with restless energy, checking wires, arming new devices. The stray cat circled nearby, sensing his tension. The phone rang. His heart jolted. "Gabe." Elena's voice came, tight with fear. "They've got me. You need to see me. Please." "Where?" "Pier 9, midnight. Please? Come alone." Her tone shifted, barely perceptible. But Gabe caught it. A faint stress on "come alone." A subtle pause. A warning. "I'll be there," he said softly. "Be ready." He hung up, breath shallow. It was a trap. He knew it. But he also knew Elena had risked everything to tip him off. "All right, kitten," he murmured to the cat. "Let's go hunting." Pier 9, midnight. Fog rolled thick over the deserted pier, swallowing sound and light alike. Gabe arrived early, moving like a wraith among rusted shipping containers. His sharp eyes scanned every shadow. They were there, he could feel it. Hidden atop a crane boom, he planted a charge linked to a secondary wire snaking through the loading area. Another device beneath a stack of crates. A final failsafe rigged to the dock supports. "You want a show?" he whispered. "You'll get one." Nearby, Syndicate surveillance van. "He's here." A voice crackled in Drake's earpiece. "Positions," Drake ordered. "No mistakes." From a dark corner of the pier, Elena watched helplessly, heart pounding. She prayed Gabe had understood. The trap is sprung. Midnight struck. Gabe stepped into the open, hands loose at his sides. His gaze swept the shadows. "Where is she?" he called out. Drake's voice echoed from the gloom. "You can't save her, Maddox, but you can die fast or slow." From the rooftop, Gabe saw the glint of rifles. He smiled grimly. "Your choice," he murmured. With a flick of his thumb, he triggered the first charge. Boom! The crane arm shattered, raining steel upon the strike team. Men scattered, shouting. Before they could regroup, the second device ignited, sending a shockwave through the crates, toppling them in a thunderous cascade. "Move! Move!" Drake roared, but Gabe was already in motion, cutting through the chaos. He reached Elena's position, slashing her restraints. "Come on! You got the signal," she gasped. "Always." Hand in hand, they sprinted toward the docks. Drake spotted them, eyes blazing. "Take them down." Bullets ripped the night air. Gabe wove through the shadows, returning fire with clinical precision. As they reached the dock's edge, he triggered the final charge. Boom! The pier supports buckled. Water surged as planks splintered beneath the strike team's feet. Gabe and Elena leapt onto a moored skiff, Gabe slashing the lines. "Hold on," he growled, gunning the motor. They vanished into the fog, leaving Drake screaming curses behind. Open water escape. The skiff cut through black waves. Wind lashed their faces, salt stinging their eyes. Elena clung to Gabe, breathless. "You could have run," she whispered. "Not without you," Gabe said simply. For a long moment, they said nothing, bound by more than fear now. "This isn't over," Elena murmured. "Frank's still alive." "We'll get him," Gabe replied. "Together." Gabe met her gaze. "Together." Romano HQ aftermath. Drake stood before Frank, his face like stone. "He escaped," Drake admitted. "And my son's killers. 2 dead. Maddox will die next." Frank's eyes narrowed. See that he does, or I'll find someone who will. Drake clenched his fists. He would not fail again. I want every asset on this. Bank records, traffic cams, phone lines. I want his lair burned to the ground. Drake's analysis. Hours later, Drake sat alone, replaying the recorded phone call. Come alone, please. He isolated the background noise. Faint hums, river gulls, a distant foghorn. He's near the waterfront, Drake muttered, close to the old dry docks. He mapped traffic flow from the pier escape, cross-referenced known safe houses. Warehouse district. I've got you. Gabe's workshop. Planning the final strike. Back in the warehouse, Gabe checked his traps. The cat rubbed against his leg. Sensing the tension, Elena paced nearby, her face set. We need to move, Gabe said. Drake's coming. Not yet, Elena countered. Frank is still alive. If I run now, it was all for nothing. He'll come after us with everything. Let him, Elena said, eyes blazing. I've waited my whole life for this. I won't stop now. Gabe studied her, admiration and fear warring within him. Then we finish it, he said at last. He unrolled blueprints of Romano's estate. We go tonight. One shot, one chance. Elena nodded. I'm ready. Across the city, police mobilize. At Drake's command, unmarked cars swept through the waterfront. He's cornered, Drake said grimly. No more games. But even as they closed in, Gabe was already preparing his final act. Time to end this, he murmured. Gabe's warehouse dawn. The first faint light of dawn seeped through the cracked windows of Gabe Maddox's warehouse. The river beyond lay still, shrouded in mist. Inside, Gabe worked swiftly. Sweat streaked his brow as he armed the final series of charges. His last safeguard. They're coming, Elena said, voice low, taut with tension. I know. Outside, a convoy of unmarked cars screeched to a halt. Armed men spilled out, faces grim beneath the glow of floodlights. At their center stood Victor Drake, his eyes cold, lips a thin line. Surround the building, Drake commanded. No mistakes. We take him alive if we can. And the girl? One lieutenant asked. Kill her if she resists. Drake snapped. Now move. Self-destruct, traps unleashed. Inside, Gabe flipped a hidden switch. All around them, red lights blinked to life. Charges armed. Stay close to me, he told Elena. I trust you, she whispered. A muffled boom shook the walls, the first breach attempt. Boom, boom. Concrete dust rained down as men forced entry through the side doors. They advanced cautiously into the dim expanse. Careful, Drake barked. It's rigged. Moments later, a tripwire snapped. Boom. Flames roared through the first breach team. Screams echoed, drowned by collapsing beams. Move, Drake shouted. But the warehouse was a labyrinth. As the next team advanced, another charge detonated. Boom. Metal shards shredded the air. Gabe pulled Elena deeper into the shadows. This way. Smoke thickened. Sparks lit the gloom. Drake pushed forward, rage boiling. Maddox, he bellowed. Face me. Showdown Gabe versus Drake. At the heart of the burning maze, Gabe waited. A single detonator in hand. Footsteps echoed. Through the swirling smoke, Drake emerged. Gun raised. Eyes wild. End of the line, Gabe, he snarled. You finally came yourself, Gabe said coolly. You should have stayed dead. You first. Drake advanced, muscles taut. But Gabe stood still, gaze steady. You still think this was about the mission? Gabe asked quietly. It was never about the job. You chose this. And I'll end it. Drake stepped forward too late. Click. Beneath his boot, a hidden pressure plate engaged. His eyes widened. You. Boom. The blast engulfed him. When the smoke cleared, only scorched debris remained. Escape seconds to spare. We've got 30 seconds, Gabe said, voice sharp. He grabbed Elena's hand. Stay with me. No matter what. They sprinted through collapsing corridors. Heat pressed in from all sides. Another charge blew, sending beams crashing behind them. Go, Gabe urged, pushing Elena ahead. She stumbled through the final doorway, Gabe close behind. Kaboom! The warehouse erupted in a tower of flame. The shockwave hurled them onto the rain-slick street. They lay gasping, alive. You okay? Gabe asked, voice ragged. Elena nodded, tears streaking her soot-streaked face. I'm okay. We made it. The final blow, Frank Romano. 2 days later, beneath a bruised sky, a courier delivered a velvet box to Frank Romano's private study. Frank eyed it warily. Who sent this? He demanded. No one knew. Open it. Frank ordered, his voice sharp. Inside lay a gold chain, familiar. Underneath, a faint mechanical click sounded. No. Boom! The blast tore through the room. When the smoke cleared, there was nothing left of Frank Romano but ash and shattered marble. River Road, Gabe and Elena. Later, beneath the fading light of sunset, Gabe and Elena drove along the winding river road. The city lay behind them, a memory smoldering in the rearview. For a long time, they rode in silence, hands intertwined on the worn steering wheel. It's over, Gabe said softly. Elena glanced at him, eyes shining. For them, not for us. You still carry it, he murmured. I always will, but now, it won't carry me. Gabe smiled faintly. The road ahead gleamed beneath the twilight. How do you feel? He asked. Elena's smile warmed. Better together. Their fingers laced tighter. Ahead, the river stretched on, endless, open. Behind them, the shadows of vengeance finally faded.